Over the years, 207 has featured a variety of filmmakers and their projects. It is extra special, though, when those filmmakers call Maine home.
Ryan Cook grew up in Waterville and has spent the last decade and a half bringing to life a story he first read when he was in elementary school. It's called Lost on a Mountain in Maine. You might recognize the title, and now you can see the true story for yourself.
This hike, it's no picnic.
There are some stories so captivating they transcend time. Lost on a Mountain in Maine most definitely falls into that category.
She is Mount Katahdin.
We're gonna hike there?
Sure. You're almost men now.
The story follows 12-year-old Don Fendler, who in 1939 got separated from his family and friends during their hike and found himself lost and alone in the woods of Katahdin.
Where's Don?
Where's your brother?
There's 100,000 acres of wilderness out there.
Most of the movie was shot in upstate New York, and that was primarily for tax incentive purposes. We made the decision that I wanted to shoot in Maine, but what I realized that if by shooting in New York, essentially I could put $2 million more towards the making of the movie, which means I could make the movie that does justice to Don's story. We could hire better actors, we could do bigger scenes, we could do all that kind of stuff. But I will say, we then did come to Maine for a week, and we filmed on top of Mount Katahdin, around Baxter State Park, and in the area, because for me, the authenticity of that area, you can't replicate anywhere else. So the most beautiful footage that's in the film is all shot in Maine.
How long from start to finish has this taken you?
So I've been working on this for 14 years,
14 years.
Yeah, so in 2010, my producing partner Derek and I basically called Don Fendler and said, hey, we want to make a movie of your story. And he's like, people have been trying to make it for years, it's never going to happen. I said, let me still come talk to you about it. And so we went up to Newport and sat on his porch, and he said, listen, I would love for you guys to make it, but it just hasn't happened for a long time, and I don't really have much hope anymore. And I told him, Don, I'm not the guy that goes away. Like, did I think it would take 14 years? No, I did not. We had some ups and downs through the years, but 14 years later, the movie's in theaters, and we're really excited to be able to share it with everybody.
And you were telling me too that, you met Don because of the book and the movie and all the things, but your relationship really bloomed into something else.
Yeah, Don and I really developed a pretty personal relationship, because I spent a lot of time with him. In those first couple of years, we went around to all these school groups and to these speaking events. I drove him up to Katahdin, where he would give a speech every year. And then after a while, we just stopped kind of talking about the mountain, and we would just go out to dinner and just talk about sports or this and that. So we had a really personal relationship, and in fact, through those conversations, I learned a lot about Don's life with his family and some of the things that went on in the outside world that we included in the movie. So the movie is obviously about the book and his story and his journey, but we were able to bring in some other of those real life elements that people might not necessarily know that are really cool, and I think support the whole story.
We need volunteers, as many as you can send.
Hey, come over here!
Do you think our son is dead?
I always told him, when things get tough, press on.
And we always said, this is not based on a true story, this is a true story. And, through the years of developing the project, Derek and I had other opportunities to work with some other Hollywood folks that wanted to kind of change the story. And that's one of the reasons why it took so long to make, is that we didn't want to go down that path. We wanted to make sure we did justice to Don's story, because we think it's strong enough, as is. There's a reason why it's resonated with people so much. So yes, it follows Don's journey, but like I said, we were able to include so much of our other research, whether it was reading through historical stuff or talking to Don of the search party and all the people that came together, and what the story meant to people across the country, and what his family was really going through while he was lost for those 9 days. That's all in the movie as well.
That's a personal flair to it that you're not going to get any other way than talking to these people.
And it's really just reminds audiences that this all really happened. This is a really incredible true story.
Yeah, and I know too that making movies seems like this big glamorous project. We know it's not. Did you run into any obstacles or anything along the way?
Every step of the way. Every step of the way. I mean, in the development process, the hardest thing is raising the money. Movies cost a lot of money to make. I mean, this is still an independent movie, but an independent movie is still an expensive thing. So obviously that process, but then actually making the movie, you've got kids and equipment, and it's 1930s, and you're out in the woods. You have all these elements that make it really difficult to tell this story. I mean, we shot the whole movie in 20 days. Essentially, so it's a lot of work to do in a short amount of time, but we got really lucky with some weather days and having good weather when we needed it and bad weather also when we needed it, because obviously that's a part of the story. So you know, there's a little bit of me that says, okay, Don was looking over us, you know, as we went through this whole process.
And Don has since, we mentioned, passed away.
Yeah.
If he were here to watch the film, what do you think he'd say?
I mean, I think he would be very proud. And for him, his favorite thing in the world was sharing his story with Mainers. I know he would want to be there for that, but mostly so he could ask people, not what you thought of the movie, but like, hey, what's going on in your life? You know, that was just who Don Fendler was.
Personable.
You know, very personal, and he wanted to know, you know, tell me about yourself. And that's why, to be honest, when he would go do events, it would take so long for the people to get through the line, because he was just asking people questions. Don Fendler loved the people of Maine more than anything in the world. So I think to see people rally around this story and this new phase with this movie, I think it would make him very happy.
It's nice to see the video of Don. By the way, Lost on a Mountain in Maine, it's in theaters now. Stay tuned for news about streaming. That's some exciting stuff that's going to be coming out. And by the way, Ryan is already getting ready for his next project, which is working behind the scenes on a little series called Dexter. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Rather different from Lost on a Mountain in Maine.
Yes, very different. If you want to learn more information about the movie or about Ryan, just head to our website or our app.
I so admire his perseverance in taking well over a decade to bring that project to fruition.
Seriously, and to stick to, okay, this is a true story.
Yeah.
We want to stick to the story.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Tell it faithfully.